The Indian luxury market is growing really fast. However, there are a lot of challenges. We have with us here Dr. Ajay Dua, who is the former Secretary of the Industry of Commerce in the Government of India. You know, there's been a lot of talks about high import duties not helping the luxury market. 30% of the world's poor live in India. Do you think we really need to do away with the duties?
I think to increase business, the duties have to be made affordable. Duties have to be brought in line with international environment. There's no doubt about it. But such things cannot be done overnight. It takes time, and the government certainly needs funds, as you said, one for people who are poor, and also for providing common services. Unless it comes out of revenue, unless such revenue comes out of taxations, the only option for the government left is to borrow, which is not a very desirable thing. Our duties used to be very high, if you would recall, in the 80s or even in the early 90s. Only in the last 15 years or so, we are seeing reduction in both our direct taxes and indirect taxes. Year after year, we've been bringing down our duties. We have now come to a stage where we are, with respect to most essential items, most commonly consumed items, fairly competitive with the rest of the world. We tax luxury goods a bit more because those are luxury, those are not essential, as the very name goes, and also those are being purchased by or consumed by a section of society which has a better capacity to pay. Over time, probably these would also be reduced, but as of now, we find that they are much lower than before, though they might be marginally higher in some cases or significantly higher in a few other cases than the developed world or markets like Hong Kong and Singapore.
So do you see them coming in line with the neighboring countries, China?
I think so. As we sign more...
Currently we are what, 35%?
On luxury, you see, there is luxury good, as you know, there is not any rigid definition. Most goods which will fall in that category, which get consumed by a few high-end customers, there the duties would vary from 20 to 40%. I am putting it at an average of about 35%. As against essential goods, which will attract duties of 8 to 10%. These very 35 to 40% range goods, which are attracting these duties, used to earlier attract 150% duties. So we made a...
This is how long back, the 150?
About less than 15 years ago.
Okay. Another thing is that instead of one is reducing duties, how about encouraging these manufacturers to manufacture in India? Is that something
I think that's
there's not much happening?
Extremely important. Today, the same luxury product which gets imported into India from, say, Italy or from France or other European countries is necessarily high cost, because higher inventory costs, higher labor costs, higher ad and marketing spend, which all of them have to incur. If these goods were to be sourced out of India, where the effective wage rate is not even increasing by 1% per year. Actually, the average for last 15 years is 0.7%. Real wages increase at the lower level. Because our population continues to grow, so we have a steady supply of manpower. Once that happens, we would be able to produce these goods at significantly lower costs than they are in Europe or in Japan or in USA, where the population increase is not as much, and as the demand increases, the wage costs go up.
Right. Is there also, one is encouraging exporters, meaning people of luxury goods to manufacture in India. Another is marketeers in India. Do you see them doing enough to develop this market?
Yes, the organized retail, as you know, in India has grown from about 2% of the total retail space in 1999 to about 8%, fourfold increase. Indians were earlier only buying from mom and pop stores, the corner shops. But now you see all large houses getting into retail business as well as others. All the retail space which has been created, and we've created over 60 million square feet in the last 10 or 11 years, that might not be necessarily so-called luxury retail space. But more and more such space would also get created once we allow FDI and retail to come into the country. Right. And once that happens, you would see the domestic market will increase considerably. Once the volume increases, I'm sure the duties can also be brought down because the total revenue won't fall, and it would be a win-win situation for both.
Do you see any direction being made, any movement in that direction?
Yes. Earlier, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, with which I used to be associated while in the government, had put out a discussion paper.
Right, but we didn't even hear a single word on FDI being uttered in the budget.
Not in the budget. The FDI changes, Sapna, don't have to be necessarily through the budget.
Right.
These, in the budget, you state the policy, which the finance minister did very eloquently by saying you would see further liberalization in FDI and other sort of regulatory mechanisms. Soon thereafter, it's been followed up by introduction of a banking bill and the PF pension bill in the Lok Sabha, in line with what was promised. And I'm sure now that the interministerial consultations are over with respect to FDI in retail, there would be a policy which would be considerably forward from where we are today of not allowing it at all,
right,
to at least letting it come in, though it might be in a calibrated and a gradual manner.
Right.
The world has moved the same way. China changed its FDI policy for retail over a 15-year time span. They didn't do it overnight.
Right.
And their complete so-called opening up happened the year they were to accede to WTO in 2003.
Right. That's interesting. So you think it would start with multi-brand retail, 51% hopefully?
Whether it's 49 or 51 is taking a guess.
Right.
But I do expect, with the consensus now developing in the government, that there would be opening up of this sector.
Right.
There is a talk in Delhi that we should also consult the states in this matter. Okay. So the process could take a little time if another round of consultations with stakeholders in the states is also undertaken.
Okay. And when will this decision come? When will this decision take place?
People are expecting this to happen in the second half of this year.
Okay.
Maybe something to do with the elections in the provinces also.
Right.
5 states which would get over by late May.